Okay, I've featured her before. She is the one who really goes after her daughter-in-law. The one. Sorry, there's several. She's one of the ones who goes after her daughter-in-law. Her daughter-in-law is the root of all evil and the estrangement that she's going through. And as a little bit of a backstory, her husband, the father of her son, has a full-on relationship with his son. Their son, rather. And also the son participates at times in his younger siblings' lives. Like he has a 10-year-old younger brother, her son, who he goes to games and things like that. And fortunately, and I will say good on her, she's not interfering in that. At least it doesn't seem so. And in fact, she's encouraging it. I think though, as I say that out loud, the reason she's encouraging it is it does give her something. It gives her connection to her son. And hopefully when she figures out that that connection isn't going to lead anywhere, and I say isn't going to lead anywhere because I've watched a lot of her content. I've now done a deep dive. And this son and daughter-in-law have tried to reconnect with her on numerous occasions. This son became aware that she was talking about him by name on a live that she was doing. He has communicated to his father, like, listen, this has to stop. She has to stop trashing my wife and that sort of thing. And she's not doing it. So eventually it's going to flash out, right? It's going to burn out. Eventually it's going to break down even further because she's not learning anything. She's more concerned about being on TikTok than she is about the actual repair of her relationship with her son and daughter-in-law so that she may access her grandchildren, which are her focus. Not shocking. So I did a big deep dive on her now. I've had enough to last me a while. I'm going to break down a couple of her videos within this video. Tell me what you think. And if there's somebody that you would like me to feature, please, link it in the comment section. So give me the link in the comment section or their name. Maybe there's a video. I do have a few that I'm working on that people have sent me. If you tag me, they block me. So, I can't say as I blame them. I'm not necessarily coming after them. I'm also not really saying things that they would want to hear or even very nice things. So I don't blame them for blocking me. Maybe I would too. Probably not. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's get into it, shall we?
Why is there this new need to eliminate your family that you came from to focus on your family that you've created with your spouse? Why is there not room for both? Every time I'm hearing an estranged child who is speaking about their mother or their father, and they are talking about how they have been disrespected with their new family, that their spouse has been disrespected, all of a sudden they just cut them off and they're choosing their new family versus the family that they came from. I don't understand why there has to be a choice, why everyone can't communicate and try to resolve the issues and continue to live amicably as a family. When you have an issue with someone, you need to communicate. And what seems to be happening is people are investing more in friendships than they are in family. I hear so many adult children saying, I have created my own family with my friends and the people that are around me. This cancel culture with my parents, I have issues with my parents, so that's it, they're done.
I don't want to get so far in that I'm going to forget where she's at. So I'm going to break it up, and to see the video in its entirety, stay to the end of this one so that it's not choppy. You could even go watch it and then come back, whatever you want to do. I also do this because I don't want people to think I'm taking things out of context or over editing the videos or anything like that. I edit for background noise. I try to remove that as much as I can. And if somebody mentions a full name or a workplace, I will edit those things out as well. So that's about it though. Or if the profanities are off the charts, I will do some editing there as well. Like there's been a few that have been pretty bad. So, well, we are building communities, those of us that are lucky enough to be able to do that, fortunate enough to be able to do that, because estrangement is incredibly isolating and lonely, out of the friends who actually show up, support us, and where we have mutual respect for boundaries, and the relationships are based on reciprocity rather than transaction and control and things like that. So that is a fact that estranged adult children seek to do that, and we find comfort and love in our chosen families. As somebody who's been estranged for over 30 years, I have to tell you it's extremely difficult to be able to do that. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of investment, and it's almost like dating in a way, because as we become healthier, we are better at choosing our chosen family. There is a point in time where many of us do the love that we know, and we end up having a lot of it, like no contacts along the way. I tell people all the time that when you estrange from your family of origin, from your relatives of origin, from the people that you share the DNA with, I don't call my relatives on my mother's side family. So that's why I'm being so specific here. We tend to do the love that we know, and we end up in a whole nother layer of no contact from friendships and people that we formed while we were in those relationships with our DNA people. Some of that is because we were in relationships due to proximity and growing up and childhood and mature, as we mature, we shed some friends naturally as well. Some of that is because we've ended up repeating the toxic relationships, including in marriages, right? And that's why the way that love is role modeled for children is so incredibly important. And that's another reason why when you have emotionally immature parents who weaponize children, who show the parents disdain and disrespect and demonstrate, I guess, toxic behaviors, we have to at some point take some stock in that and look at what our children are seeing and what they're learning about the tolerance for toxicity and what love looks like, and how relationships are earned through trust, not owed kind of thing, not entitled because you have a title. So she's right on that count. And, around how we are forming new family units. It's never going to be what a DNA family is like. And someone's going to go, I hope not. And yeah, I hope not. Also, it is different most of the time. There's a certain distance. There's a certain feeling of not having those background memories and feelings and connection that we witness other people have with their families of origin. And that can be really hard, especially around the holidays. Feeling like we can ask for help the same way I think family to family, I wouldn't know, ask for help. And support, it's stunted, it's difficult, it has a barrier to it, or it can feel like that, and it takes a long time to get to a place where that barrier comes down. And I'm not saying that's on their end, I'm saying for me personally that's been on my end, for feelings of not wanting to be a burden, a lack of safety that was something that I was conditioned to feel, not something that was in front of me. I've been very fortunate, and it has taken over 30 years, well, a part of the over 30 years, to form friendships and close relationships. Particularly, I have one person who is my family outside of my children, but my children have me, I don't have them. They depend on me. That's, my role as a mother is to be their mother, not to be someone who is looking to them for support. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't go to my children or share something. It does mean I'm very careful about that, and not because they would want me to be or anything. It just means that I have a role in their life and they have a role in my life. They are my children. They are not my peers. They are not my friends. We have a great time, They are my children. I am their mother. And that role is very, very clear. To me, anyway. Maybe not to her. And that might be part of the problem. Anyway, if you're in this position, I don't feel like I need to continue to expand and explain it. I do expand and explain some of it because I know it resonates, and I know it's something that we struggle with. We struggle with isolation and loneliness, period. We do. And so her trying to make it seem like people are so replaceable and that we're just swapping them out. Nothing is ever going to fill the void of the fact that I've never in my life growing up experienced what it's like to have a mom. Nothing is ever going to fill the void of the fact that I know, even though I don't want to be a part of them because they stand behind my mother and because they've never shown me care or concern at all. However, knowing that they're all together at the holidays and doing all the things, and with my mother, my main abuser, and it was also with my grandparents when they were alive, knowing that they're all together and I don't have that, and my children didn't grow up having their cousins and all of those things, that's a pain that isn't going to go away because I have a chosen family. It's just not. And for people like this, the way that they look at the world is that people are replaceable. They're interchangeable. And the reason that I feel this way is because of how she speaks. She acts like they are. Like us as estranged adult children, we're just swapping people in and out. And that's because it's how she operates with probably certain relationships or sees relationships as being. That's just my point of view on that one. It's also not about this generation. I've been estranged for over 30 years, long before the internet. I know a lot of people who I came to know before I started creating content. Now, I know way more. Of course, I also have a therapy practice. So I know a lot of people of all different generations who are in the same boat. The difference now is that there's a resource available where we learn about patterns of behavior, which validate the fact that we weren't the crazy ones like we were told we were. Learning about gaslighting and about how to have boundaries, that we can have boundaries, learning about emotionally immature parents, learning about BPD parents and narcissistic parents and parents with NPD and so on and so forth. We have an access to information now in a way that we never did before. And we've learned together that just because somebody shares DNA doesn't mean that we're stuck in that relationship with them. Nobody says to someone who leaves a domestic violence situation, oh my God, you should stay there. Well, actually, let me take that back. Some people do. Some people do. I'm not saying she did, but personality type. But, when we say, oh, we left domestic violence, and I've done that twice, incidentally, did the love I know, I know different now. People were like, oh, good, you got out and whatever. And, nobody was saying, oh my God, but that's your spouse or that's your boyfriend. However, when we leave relationships with our parent who is violating us in a multitude of ways, but that's your mother, but that's your father. Violence is violence, whether it's emotional, physical, or sexual. If we say the word here, what happens? Violence is violence, and it actually has the same impact on the brain regardless of what the violence is. It creates the same coping mechanisms. I have complex PTSD, and I can guarantee you that's more related to the emotional violence that I experienced from my mother in particular than any other violence that I've ever experienced. So anyway, let's carry on with her, shall we? I'm sure I forgot a point or two. Hopefully it'll come back to me.
I understand if there is extreme disrespect, if there is lack of boundaries, if there is any intention of harm, if it is a situation of safety, I understand you cutting ties with your parents.
I know that was quick. The language. If there is extreme, she didn't put it that way. She might as well. She does this a lot. Disrespect and, extreme intent to cause harm or intent to cause harm or, it's intolerable at a level that I approve of, then I get it. What is extreme disrespect? How often does somebody get to violate boundaries before we get tired and decide we're not going to engage anymore? How unsafe do we have to feel in a relationship? What level of being unsafe, feeling unsafe, does it have to be to meet her, approval? I wonder. Oh, well, definitely not the level she's causing. For sure not. For sure not. Okay.
Don't understand is why we can't have issues in the relationship and not resolve them and move forward. I never liked my mother-in-law, ever. There were times where I felt disrespected by her, but that's my husband's mother and that's my children's grandmother. So I loved my children more than my anger towards my mother-in-law.
Yet she doesn't love her grandchildren more than her hatred of her daughter-in-law, as she demonstrates in many videos and lots of things that she says. I'm going to include little posts from her platform that she puts out there over and over again. Now, her son and daughter-in-law have tried to be in a relationship with her several times. I think there was one video a while back where she said they've come back like 7 times, which is an interesting number because statistically it takes about 7 times to leave an abusive relationship, particularly a domestic violence relationship. So isn't that interesting? About 7 times they went back and forth. She cannot love or prioritize her grandchildren enough to respect boundaries. That's really what it comes down to. And now she's out here, she did a live naming her son. They are watching her content because they're concerned about the impact. Again, we don't live in a vacuum. And this woman, full face, online, talking about her daughter-in-law in pretty venomous ways. Why would you ever think that they would then want to have a relationship with you when you live in the same community and you're doing this for all to see and you're villainizing your son's wife? And while we're on the topic, prioritizations of relationships. When we get married, we prioritize our chosen person and then the children we have with our chosen person, because that is our new family unit that we are nurturing and growing and developing. And it isn't an either or situation. It is, I guess, a hierarchy. Husband and wife are up here. Parents fall lower now. Children rise on top of the parents. That's actually what it's supposed to be like. The parents are going to die off and, the next generation comes up and they should know how to prioritize each other, how to be close, how to have close-knit, healthy, communicative, boundary-respecting relationships. She wants things her way. She doesn't really want to share her son, but if she's equal to his wife, she'll probably consider it. And that's where the rub is for her. She has lost that relationship with her son, who she grew up to be very attached to her. Other videos show this, demonstrate that this is how she is in the relationship. And her failure to recognize that she's grown him up into an independent man, if she has, well, he is now, and allow him to have the next journey in his life and be a support system is why they are where they are. And I see this in my therapy practice with parents who are on the verge of ending up in estrangements. They are blaming the in-laws, the daughter-in-law or the son-in-law of their child for not seeing them as much and things like that. And it takes a little bit of work for them to recognize, no, our relationships evolve and they're changing and priorities change. And if you don't grow and change along with where your spot is now, your position is now, you are risking not having any position at all. And I will say this, I will die on a hill. There are a lot of estrangements that this is how they become such. That parent can't recognize that their role has changed and lean back and make space and share. And probably because they feel abandoned, they are losing their position and they don't know or they fear what their next position looks like. And they quantify love rather than looking at the quality of the time that they spend. They look at, am I getting more? Not just the same, but am I the most important person as the mother kind of thing? And yes, I'm a little snarky sparky, so I gotta give you some sparkle. Okay. Zen. She doesn't get me as bad as some of them, although she definitely has a couple of videos in there that my mother probably wrote the script for, just saying.
What you're showing your children when you say they have disrespected me and we can't have them in their life is as your children get older and they become teenagers, and this respect issue is huge with teenagers. Respect isn't given, it's earned. I hear this from teenagers. So what you're telling them is when they become a teenager and they feel like you've disrespected them, they're going to become estranged from you because that's the environment that they now have been raised in. You need to be teaching your children that if there's conflict in a relationship and you feel disrespected, that you need to verbalize these things and learn how to communicate, because the family dynamic is going to be eliminated in the next generation.
So did I mishear that we're not supposed to teach our children respect is earned and that it's a two-way street, and certainly not model it for them? What we're supposed to do is stay in toxic, intolerable relationships and allow our children to see our boundaries being crossed over and over and over again. And you just stay because you have DNA involved. Right. Okay. And there's not going to be any families left. For sure not. Not one on the entire planet. Oh, what I'm really hoping is that as time goes on and as we bring more light to the topic of estrangement and parents start to see that they're not owed relationships, they find themselves in therapy to deal with the things that they need to deal with so that they could be the kind of person that their adult child chooses to be around instead of the kind of person that their adult child is trapped with. You know, that's part of the difference. Respect is such an easy thing to give. Respect for boundaries is such an easy thing to do. And I've said it in other videos before. My eldest daughter laid down a pretty heavy-duty boundary with me because I gave her unsolicited advice and she didn't like it. And she didn't like the way I delivered it. She didn't like what I said. She didn't like that I said it, the whole thing. And that's okay. You know, that she didn't like that. And it's not okay that after she said to me, if I want advice, I'll ask for it. It wouldn't be okay for me to violate that. I don't need to tell her things. I want to support her. I want to be helpful. Now, when she wants advice, she asks me, specifically topic related. And if I say to her, well, to give you advice on this, I might need to expand into this area that you talked about as well. Are we good with that? And if we are, I proceed. And if she's not, I don't. Or I might find a workaround that holds respect for her boundary. She's an adult person that I raised to be capable of making her own decisions in this world. I don't need to save her from scraping her knees, or any of my children. I don't want to target her. It's just a boundary that we have together. I don't need to save her from scraping her knees just because I think I know best. Maybe she won't scrape them. Maybe I don't know best. Is that a possibility, that just because I did it a certain way, it might not be the best possible way? I wonder. These types of parents can't conceptualize that there is another way. And she talks about, wanting to give advice around her children and how, like her grandchildren, and how she is raised and her children. And look, they turned out okay and all the things. And generationally, things change. Medically, things change. And psychologically, thank goodness things have changed in the ways that parents now raise children. And I do think sometimes the pendulum might swing too far one way and it needs to come back to middle. That's my personal opinion and feeling. I think that raising children, though, in nonviolent, meaning no spanking, households where they are heard, where their feelings are validated, where their parents now have language around and tools, co-regulation rather than codependency, I think we have moved in the right direction. And what that also says to me is the parents of the older generation, and I would fit in that category, what we knew would work may not apply anymore because we know more. We know different. We need to be more aware of the fact that just because we're older doesn't mean we know everything. And I include myself in that. I learn things from my kids all the time. I mean, they read stuff and I'm like, wow, where'd you learn that? That's incredible. And she has no space for that. She knows everything. She knows it all. She knows best. She knows all about estrangements, how they all are, and it's only the fault of the adult children unless there's extreme right? Okay, now I'm like hair on fire, snarky, sparky.
You need to be teaching your children that if there's conflict in a relationship and you feel disrespected, that you need to verbalize these things and learn how to communicate, because the family dynamic is going to be eliminated in the next generation. There's not going to be a family dynamic. There's going to be families that which you were raised in, and then once you grow up, you move on and you no longer talk to your parents. That's the direction of society. That is the direction that this world is going in. So if we don't learn to communicate with each other and we don't learn to verbalize and vocalize our differences and learn how to communicate, unfortunately, grandparents will not be seeing their grandchildren grow up. Parents will not be involved in their children's lives when they become adults. This is the direction that we're headed in, and it's so upsetting. It's just so upsetting. I wish that we could change things. I hope that we stop looking at social media for guidance for communication. I hope that the labeling stops. I hope that the word trauma returns to its original meaning. And I hope that we as society can come back together again. That's all. Bye.
Yeah, I hope that we stop talking about gaslighting and boundaries and identifying behaviors that are patterned, and I hope we stop talking about all this stuff so I can maintain where I am and who I am, and they have to take it or leave it. That's what I heard in that. Conflict resolution. That's what she's talking about in communication, sharing feelings, except she's not talking about the resolution part of it. She's in no video said that I'm aware of, and I've watched, I think most of them at this point. She's not said, I wish they would communicate to me so I could do better. I wish they would communicate to me and tell me what I was doing wrong so that we could resolve the conflict, so that, I could take accountability and I could come to the table. None of that has existed in her videos. And I think that tells the whole story. And this nonsense around teenagers going no contact because, they're going to be disrespectful and then they're going to throw in your face, well, respect is a two-way street. It's just fear-mongering. It's just to make parents feel like if they go no contact, their children are going to follow suit because that's what they learned. And that's categorically untrue. The reasons for no contact are because, by and large, when we become adults and we're in relationships with our parents, regardless of childhood trauma, which, if you know any part of my backstory, I've been through physical, sexual, and emotional violence. My mother is a sociopath and a narcissist, and lots of things. None of which is the reason that I ended up estranging. Did it create a lack of foundation or a horrific foundation from which leaving was much easier? Yep, it sure did. However, that wasn't the reason. The reason was because in our adult relationship, her behavior became so intolerable that staying in it would not have made sense. And it became intolerable in the respect of how she was treating my children, elevating my eldest daughter, and ignoring my son. In fact, I can tell you she didn't like my son. And we're talking about a 2.5-year-old and a 6-year-old. And also doing things in relationship to the 6-year-old that were really unhealthy and toxic, creating division between myself and my children, doing the undermining things. I can't speak anymore. And that's what ultimately blew the relationship apart. She was someone that I wouldn't be around if she was a friend. Why would I be around someone so hurtful that actually should, as in her job description, be a good person to me, a loving person, an unconditionally loving person to me? So, yeah. Okay. There's more. There is more. So stay tuned. I'm going to break this down in parts because this video is going to become very, very long. I will post them one after the other, and I will put in the description of the videos each of the links so you can link back and forth, and I'll label them with parts, although I don't know how related they'll be, so I may not relate. I'll label them with parts in the description so that you can find them easily. So anyway, thank you for being here. Stay tuned for more of, well, part of her handle says Queen, the Queen of something.
Why is there this new need to eliminate your family that you came from to focus on your family that you've created with your spouse? Why is there not room for both? Every time I'm hearing an estranged child who is speaking about their mother or their father, and they are talking about how they have been disrespected with their new family, that their spouse has been disrespected, all of a sudden they just cut them off and they're choosing their new family versus the family that they came from. I don't understand why there has to be a choice. Why everyone can't communicate and try to resolve the issues and continue to live amicably as a family. When you have an issue with someone, you need to communicate. And what seems to be happening is people are investing more in friendships than they are in family. I hear so many adult children saying, I have created my own family with my friends and the people that are around me. This cancel culture with my parents, I have issues with my parents, so that's it, they're done. I understand if there is extreme disrespect if there is lack of boundaries, if there is any intention of harm, if it is a situation of safety, I understand you cutting ties with your parents. What I don't understand is why we can't have issues in the relationship and not resolve them and move forward. I never liked my mother-in-law, ever. There were times where I felt disrespected by her, but that's my husband's mother and that's my children's grandmother. So I loved my children more than my anger towards my mother-in-law. What you're showing your children when you say they have disrespected me and we can't have them in their life is, as your children get older and they become teenagers, and this respect issue is huge with teenagers. Respect isn't given, it's earned. I hear this from teenagers. So what you're telling them is when they become a teenager and they feel like you've disrespected them, they're going to become estranged from you because that's the environment that they now have been raised in. You need to be teaching your children that if there's conflict in a relationship and you feel disrespected, that you need to verbalize these things and learn how to communicate, because the family dynamic is going to be eliminated in the next generation. There's not going to be a family dynamic. There's going to be families that which you were raised in, and then once you grow up, you move on and you no longer talk to your parents. That's the direction of society. That is the direction that this world is going in. So if we don't learn to communicate with each other and we don't learn to verbalize and vocalize our differences and learn how to communicate, unfortunately, grandparents will not be seeing their grandchildren grow up. Parents will not be involved in their children's lives when they become adults. This is the direction that we're headed in, and it's so upsetting. It's just so upsetting. I wish that we could change things. I hope that we stop looking at social media for guidance for communication. I hope that the labeling stops. I hope that the word trauma returns to its original meaning. And I hope that we as society can come back together again. That's all. Bye.